So now we're back here on our website and we have some more styling to do. We've already done our header right here, our header section. We've done our navigation bars. We have that going on. We kind of styled the background of that. Let's look at styling some more things. We have our first paragraph section here that's fun. We have our H2 headings. There's a couple of different things we can do here to start to style our website. So one of the things we'll do first off the bat is we'll look at these H2 headings that we have. And I'll go ahead and uncomment this so you can see H2 headings. And I'll look at applying a few different styles to our H2 headings. Text transform, capitalize, font family fantasy, and font weight bold. We see right now, before I save it, that all of our H2 headings look in a sans serif font. They're pretty much bold. They're pretty much an H2 heading default styling that the browser gives to it. We can change that a little bit. So when we go and apply these styles to our H2 headings, text transform, capitalize, fantasy for the font family, and font weight bold, we'll be able to change that a little bit. And I'm going to go ahead and hit save and go over here and just refresh this. And now we're going to see that all of our H2 headings have changed from that sans serif font to the fantasy font, and we let the browser just choose whatever fantasy font they wanted. It wanted. All of it's changed to a fantasy font, and all of it's capitalized. The first letter of each one is capitalized. So you can change that, and I put that there so you can kind of play around with it. If you want to make this instead of capitalized, you can make it all uppercase. Just save that, and you can make it look a little differently if you want it to be uppercase. I'm not going to do that, but that just changes the look a little bit. And so that'll allow you to do that. I'm going to go ahead and put it back to capitalize. And we'll keep it in that way. And that way all of our stuff will be capitalized in terms of our H2 headings. And we can just peek at that real quick as well. They're all capitalized. So now we go back to our Sublime Text here. And we have our first paragraph section, this fun section that we have on our website. And this right here was the first paragraph where we had, the ID we assigned to fun. Writing HTML can be fun. There are so many things you can do. We put all that roses are red, violets are blue. We named that whole section fun, our first paragraph section. So now what are we going to do with that? What can we do with that section? We're going to go over here and I'm going to uncomment the styles I have for it and save it. And we're going to talk about what each of these particular aspects and these particular font and rules will do. So I'm going to just go ahead and comment out a couple of them real quick just so we can see, and I'll just comment them out and save it. And the first thing will be applied because we still have our brackets here. Our first thing we apply. So text line left, it's already left. As I save it, if I refresh it, you're going to see it's still going to be lined to the left, but I put that there so you can play around with it. Maybe you want it to be centered, or maybe you want it to be right justified, or just justified all over. You can have this text align property and play around with it, however you'd like it to be. So now I'm going to go ahead and take this off and have background color beige and save that and see what that does for our background color. Go ahead and hit refresh for that, and now we're starting to have a background color for this first paragraph section we have here. We have a background color. So now I'm going to go ahead and uncomment the next one, font family. I want to change the font for that, and I'm going to go ahead and just pick fantasy, which is one of the generic fonts, and let the browser choose what it wants to do with that. I'll hit save and go to see what that does for our font there, and obviously that's going to change it to a different font. So it's the same type of font that we have in our heading right there, and we have for the headings for our H2 in this fun first paragraph section. So now I'll go back. Let's change the font size. And if you remember, we set the font size for the overall body to be 1M, if we will. So we're going to make this, because we set the overall body, we're going to make this 1.4 times as big as that. So we're going to make it a little bit big. I'm going to hit save. Now you can change that and make it as big as you want to. You can have fun with it. It's a fun ID. And I refresh. Now you can see it's a bit bigger. And it's popping out and it's standing out on the page, so to speak. So now, as we see, there's still a bit of a gap here. What can we do to kind of fix that? So I'm going to go ahead and see if this padding will fix it. Uncomment that. And I just gave it a top and a bottom padding of 34px and a right and a left of 45. You can play around with your preference for that. But we'll take a look at that and go over here and save this and hit refresh. And now you can see our website is starting to take shape. You have this heading section, we have this first paragraph section, we've done some fun things with it. We've changed the font to be different than the body text, if you will. We've kind of added some padding to it. You can do a number, we've added a background color that's different than the rest of the body, and from that. So you can start doing a lot what you want to do with this. So play around with this section. This is our first paragraph section. You can change some of the styles that we have here, but we're going to stick with this for right now and do the rest of our website a little bit later on. So now we're back here, we're looking at our website, we've just done our our first paragraph section, our fun ID section. We've kind of played that out and did some things with that. Now we have some more things here. We have a bunch of other content that's kind of just flush up against the side of our body here, and there may be a few things we want to do that. And this will give us a chance to look at display grid and to lay it out a couple different ways. So I'm going to look at our first container. And if you remember when we talked about how we set up containers for our website, and that our first container was sectioned off in the formatting text section, the creating to list, and my first table. That was our first container. And we put section elements, one around this whole thing, all three of them, and then individual section elements to section off each one inside this. Well, here's where that comes into handy, and it allows us to use the display grid format, if you will. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this off a bit, take a couple of these things off so we can comment this out and see what's available. And I'll go ahead and just first of all, comment this and just talk about the first couple things here. So we have, and I'll save it, our first container. We know it contains those three sections: the formatting section, the list section, and the table section. And what I'm going to do is to create a little bit of space and body, some padding between those sections on the top and bottom and left and right, and it'll make more sense when we have our display grid. And then some margin where there's a margin on the top and bottom, and auto to kind of center some things and to set them up in a certain way. So we will go ahead and look at this, just adding some margin and some padding here, and I'll hit refresh. And now you can see they're not flush up against the side. There's a little more space here in between them. They're not flush up against like the second container is, because we haven't done anything with that yet. So there's a little more space and padding between them. So now what do we want to do with the three sections that we put section elements around? What do we want to do with them? We want to go ahead and use a display grid rule here. I'm going to uncomment this. Now this display grid is going to actually set up each of these three sections into a grid on our website, and we can tell it how to do that. So if I go right here and I hit uncomment this, you tell it that you can do grid template columns or grid template rows. We're going to do columns. We're going to make the template for our grid be columns, and we're going to have one fraction. We're going to be three sections, and each of the sections is going to take up one fraction of it. So it'll be a third, a third, and a third. Now you could write this the exact same way by doing grid template columns, and then just do, colon 1FR, 1FR, 1FR. The 1FR stands for fractions. You could write it this way and it would work. This is a standard way to write it. But a shorthand way is to go do grid template columns, repeat, because you're going to repeat the 1FR. We're going to repeat it. Repeat it 3 times and have each one be one fraction, make up one fraction of this total thirds that's going to be sectioned out on our website. So let's see what that looks like. Let's save this for our first container. Let's see what it looks like. Go back over here and hit refresh, because we see what it looks like right now. It's kind of all in a line, and we'll hit refresh. And now we can see it's all set up in a grid very nicely. You can see why all that work to section things off was important to do, because now we can lay out things on our grid exactly like this, that'll be laid out much easier for us. So all that work we did, sectioning off this makes sense. And so what I'm going to do now also is comment out this. We can add a little bit of a gap. You can make this gap as big or as small as you want to. It's kind of how you want to style and design your website. But just to add a little bit of a gap in our website between the columns that we've set up, the 3 columns that we've set up. So if I go back up here, we can see how subscript is kind of close to, this is a list of things I need from the grocery store. That's kind of close, and italicized and or that's a little bit close to this section. Since we've added the grid gap, if I hit refresh, just gives it a little teeny bit more space. So you could add more space if you want. It just gives it a little bit more space. We can play around with that if we like. But now we have things kind of sectioned out. And our website, this first container here, this first section is really beginning to take shape. So what I'm going to do is we're going to go back. Now let's apply some styles to our second container. So we have a second section that we have out. And before I hit save for that, we know that second section is going to include our images and our links, right? Where we have our little navigation menu. We were just trying out some things and links and learning how to do that. This is a part of our second section with our images. So what styles are we going to apply to that? So the second container, and what I'm going to do is I will comment out a couple of these things first. Our grid gap, will comment out that. And display grid, we'll comment out that. Right now, so we're going to add a border on top of it to separate it from the first container above it. We're going to add some padding, similar padding for the top and bottom and left and right, and margin 20px and auto just to kind of center things and do something for the top and bottom to separate it a little bit. And I'll take this away right here. I'm going to hit save. Now let's see what this does for that second container that contains images and links, our links section. Go back over to here. And we see how it looks right now. We're going to go ahead and hit refresh. And now we can see we have a dotted line to separate it from the top section. And we have a little more space on the side. It's not flush up against. It's a little bit of space with the paddings there. Now let's go ahead and do our display grid and add some styles when it comes to grid. So in order to do that, to make this display in the grid, I'll uncomment that. We'll do the same type of format here. We'll do grid template columns, and instead of doing 3 columns, we're going to do 2 and have each section take up 1 fraction. So basically this will be 50% and this will be 50%. And we'll go ahead and put the grid gap in there so we can have a little bit of space between them, and we'll go ahead and do it like that and hit save. And see how this makes our second container look. Go back over here, take a look at that, and hit refresh. Now when we go down here, there we have our second container now has the 50% of half of it's being taken up by links and images. It's kind of in a grid format, and we can see that's working out pretty nicely for us. So our grid format is there. Now we have our last container that we set up, our third container that has our audio and video. We have our audio file, we have our video iframe element that we used from our last course. So we'll go over here for our third container, and we know in our third container, I'll go down here to it, we had a couple things that we did. And I'll walk through a couple of things we did. Now this is our second container. Go down to our third container. Third container here. Now I'm going to add audio and video that we have. We'll add a class to this audio section, and we'll talk about that in just a minute so we can style that audio block a little differently. Maybe you're a musician and you want to think about various things you can do with your audio or your podcast. You want to put different things you can do if you want to do it on your own and put some things out there. So I added an audio class to that. But we essentially have our section, our third container, that's including both the audio and the video. We can see it ends right there. The video is in its own section with an H3 heading, and then the audio is in its own section, and both of them are within this third container wrapper, if you will, a big wrapper. So let's apply some styles to the wrapper, just the third container overall. As I do that, what we've done here, and I'll take this away too as well, we have a margin that we set up, and we're going to do like the top, right and left and bottom there. So we're going to put some margin there, add some padding, 34px on both the top and the bottom and the right and the left. You can change that if you want. Let's go ahead and make the background color beige, just like we did for our fun ID beige. Maybe that'll look pretty good on our website, I think. And let's text align center. So if I'll put this, let's text, I'll comment out this real quick. Let's just see what it looks like with just adding the margin and the padding and making the background color beige for our third container. And I'll go ahead and refresh that. And now we see that we have, our margin and padding is there. We have a little bit of padding that's been added, and the background color is beige, and that kind of matches what's up the top here. And so we have to do a couple more things with that right now. So we have a background color there. We're going to go ahead and put in our text align center. Oh, I did that. And save it. Now this is going to put everything in the center. So our text align center, we have it right now. Before I refresh it, we have everything kind of lined up towards the side right here. Now that we've added the text align center, it'll center this content in our container. And if you notice, we're not applying a display grid. We're essentially just centering all the content, putting a background color, and adding some margin and padding around it. So I'll go here. This is what it looks like now. Come to the left, and if I refresh it, now it's all centered. So now I'm going to add audio and video. Here's our audio block that we have right here that we can play. And here's our H3 for our video, all lined up, and it kind of matches the very first coloring and background coloring for our fun ID, our first paragraph section. So now what we'll do is, since we have that, let's play around with that a little bit. Let's do a couple things with that. We have that all set up, and it's aligned center. We need to put it in a grid. Let's do something with this audio block. And we'll do something with the header for the video section as well. We'll do something with this audio block. So the audio class, as I mentioned to you, I added to the audio, the audio for our Charles Belay, whatever audio you may have added to your website, if you use this or not, if you downloaded what we have. But this class audio, we wrapped it in a paragraph section, right? So this paragraph is right here. We have the words, Charles Belay Purvis was a physician during the Civil War. We have a couple BR, some break elements. And then we have the actual audio file that's included in our audio folder up here. So we have the actual audio file that's included in our audio folder. And that's why we have audio/Charles Boulay Purvis, the name of the audio file. So all of this is here in controls, and this is all set up. And by adding a class to this, just this content that's contained within the paragraph element, the audio and the words right there, by adding this, and this is in the audio element, we can now style it a little bit. We can do something with that. So let's go back over here to our audio element, and let's see some styles we might want to add to it. So I'll go ahead and move that over, and I'm going to just comment out a couple of these things, and we'll see a couple of them at a time. So we just think about some box shadows, making the box shadow. We're applying the box shadow to all around the box, if you will, the top, the bottom, left, and right, applying it. Black, we're going to make the background color for our audio white. You can make it whatever you want it to be. Give it some padding on the top of 40px and some padding on the bottom. And let's see what we can do with this audio block of this podcast that I have. It could be whatever you want it to be in there. So if we do this, it's kind of, you can't quite see everything right now. Let me go back in here and make sure that I saved it. I didn't save it. You can see it's still there, so that's why it's not applying. If I hit save, now it should apply these styles and this rule to the audio block. So it looks like this now. We need to put a new background color and kind of section this off. And if I hit refresh, now we have a background color to this. We have the Charles Boulay Purvis. That was within that paragraph element we just saw, and this is within the audio block. So this is here now, and this is playing with the controls. And you can start to see that this is here starting to play off however you like it. Now, and it has a bit of a box shadow. You can do whatever you want with this. You can be very creative. If you're a musician or if you're doing something else for your website and you want to section something off or you want to do something with audio, do whatever you want. Be very creative with it. But you can make it sound or make it look an appearance in the way you want it to look. So if I go back here, and I'm just going to change the width a bit, uncomment that, and this will be the width of the containing container. So it's going to be the width of this third container that's containing it. And I'm going to go ahead and put margin auto just to uncomment this a bit as well. So you can play around with the width. If I hit save, we see width at 89%. And I go here and hit save. It's just going to adjust the width a bit. So I can make this width 50%. I can make it 89%. I can do whatever I'd like to do with that. If I go ahead and make this, change it a bit, and go over here and make it, say 49%. I'll just make it 50, not 500, make it 50. And you can see how it'll change the audio block. It's kind of covering 89% of it now. If I change it, I can make that smaller. So you can make and style your audio blocks however you want to do it. You can play around with it. I'll go ahead and do that for right now and put it back to 89%. But you go ahead and change it the way you want to. But this is what we have so far for our audio block and for our website. And now we're going to go ahead and do a couple more things to style this a little bit more and to style the footer section that we have in our website. We're going to do a couple more things.